Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live. I'm here to give you an update on the Young Thug YSL trial. The trial is still on hold as they await the outcome of 3 recusal motions against Judge Glanville. And we had some movement today. We have a ruling in from the judge on whether she should recuse herself from hearing these recusal motions. This is Judge Rachel Krause, who was assigned to hear the recusal motions against Judge Glanville after Glanville basically kind of gave up, threw up his hands, and said, okay, we'll send him to another judge. So Brian Steele and Keith Adams, Young Thug's lawyers, actually filed a supplement to their motion today that called the judge out, Rachel Krause, the one who's supposed to decide these recusal motions, called her out on campaign donation that she had received from Judge Glanville. They mistakenly in the beginning said that she had also donated to Judge Glanville's campaign, but then they corrected it later and said, no, actually, it's just Judge Glanville donating to her campaign. It was in April 2021. Speaking of April Love, hello on YouTube. Thanks for signing on, and hello everyone who's joining me on TikTok. We're live on both mediums right now. So I wanted to just go over the orders that happened. Brian Steele's recusal motion, well, actually his supplemental recusal motion. He's already got the recusal motion in pending, and this is the one that's been in for a couple of weeks, but he supplemented it today with the information about the campaign donation and said that not only should Rachel Krause not hear the case because she's a judge in the same circuit as Judge Glanville, but she also received this campaign donation from him just back in April. And to try to stick with the case law in Georgia State, they said that the $2,000 that he donated to her campaign could be considered exceptionally large, because that's well-established case law in Georgia, that it's not just any campaign donation that can get you recused. It has to be an exceptionally large one. But pretty quick, Judge Krause turned around and said, no, I'm not going to recuse myself. So here's the order right here. Let me bring it up on the screen for the YouTubers. But thanks everybody for tuning in, and thank you guys on TikTok for all the love. I'll try to post some clips of this later today to kind of bring people the news. But the judge said today, this is her order. It says it was randomly assigned to this court to consider certain motions to recuse Judge Glanville from further proceedings in this case. And obviously we know which case she is talking about here. But Black Butterfly on YouTube, thanks for saying hi. And everybody on TikTok, thanks for coming in again. We're doing a breakdown on the latest in the Young Thug YSL trial and what's going on with the recusal motions against Judge Glanville. They were assigned to another judge. Her name is Rachel Krause. And the recusal motions are already in, but Brian Steele and Keith Adams, Young Thug's lawyers today, supplemented, or actually, I guess it was last night. They late yesterday afternoon, they filed their they filed a supplement asking Krause to recuse herself and saying that, or citing a campaign donation that Glanville had given her, and then along with the fact that she works in the same court as him. And she today declined to recuse, and she also rejected Diamante Kendrick's lawyer's recusal motion too. And Katie Sleva on TikTok, I see you. You say you're happy to have caught one of the lives. I'm stoked that you were able to catch it. Yeah, and somebody says they came over on Neek. She came over on YouTube to see the documents. And yeah, I'm still trying to get everything set up in here. I know I got to just figure out a way to position my phone so that it shows you guys the StreamYard screen. I mean, there's got to be a way to simulcast so I can show the documents on TikTok too. But yes, the judge has not decided whether Glanville should be recused, but she's decided whether she should be recused from the recusal motions. And she said no. Courtney, I see your message on YouTube. You say you love me. Thank you so much for the love. I love you guys back. But I like getting on here and explaining some documents to you. This judge recusal stuff is kind of interesting, digging into the case law. See, the thing is, they had to have kind of known. I mean, they're advocating for their clients, but they had to have kind of known this would have been an uphill battle, because when you read into the cases that they're citing, these judges aren't actually getting recused. The cases that they cite, the judges actually don't even get recused. So but they had to, if they thought there was a chance, they had to advocate for their client. But we still don't have a ruling on the actual recusal motion. And remember what happened yesterday. The prosecutors were supposed to file their opposition, but Adrienne Love said she had a medical emergency that took her away from work. So they now have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to file. So I'll be sure to get that and do another live. This was kind of some breaking news today that happened, but we were all kind of expecting her to rule on these recusal motions, when that had to have come sooner than later. But you can see here, she cites some cases. There's that Magnolia case that we've seen before, the judge recusal case. But she says the Georgia Supreme Court has held that the mere fact of a campaign contribution to a judge, even from a party to the case, does not warrant recusal where the contribution was not exceptionally large. And I took a few minutes and looked in these cases that they cite here. This 2011 one, actually the judge wasn't recused, and there's no dollar amount listed, because I'm like, what do they consider exceptionally large? Because that's just kind of a subjective thing. But when you read through the campaign donations, especially the ones that she got over the year, $2,000 is not even the largest one that she got. So I'm not sure what the limit is in Georgia. But honestly, I think all the campaign donations for judges are a little off. I mean, Rachel Krause has been a judge for a number of years. At least in California, we usually only see this type of like heavy fundraising for new judges, people, unincumbents who are fighting for an open seat, because most of the judges in California end up getting appointed by the governor. And then when they run for re-election, it's really not much of a campaign. That's why I was surprised. And it turns out they didn't, but they said in the beginning that Judge Glanville had actually taken a donation from Krause, but he's been a judge since like 2005. I'm like, why do these people even need to fundraise for their campaigns? But Krause has been a judge for a number of years too. It's just like kind of a turnoff that they campaign like that. Like I said, at least in California, you don't see a lot of incumbent judges feeling like they need to campaign and fundraise a lot, because they really don't have a lot of active opponents. But it just says something about the politics of Fulton County in Atlanta, Georgia, and what's driving this whole thing. But so yeah, this is her order saying, no, I'm not going to recuse myself. I'm going to be the one to decide these orders. She said the Code of Judicial Conduct reiterates that point, noting that when a campaign contribution is less than the maximum allowable contribution permitted by law, an affidavit seeking recusal must allege additional facts demonstrating the need for recusal. And in Brian Steele and Keith Adams' supplement, their motion for recusal, they talk about against her. They talk about how she's also in the same court, but she's saying that doesn't warrant recusal either. But because under Georgia law, the asserted campaign contributions would not warrant recusal, and defendant Kendrick has not alleged any additional facts demonstrating the need for recusal. He has not met the third criteria for recusal. They're talking about Doug Weinstein's motion now. So says defendant Williams' additional assertions of Judicial Qualification Commission opinion 220 in support of his motion is unavailing for two important reasons. First, Judge Glanville is neither a party nor counsel in the criminal prosecution, nor is this a mandamus action, and defendant Williams cannot make make it so by filing a recusal motion. So opinion 220's conclusion that a judge should not preside in an action where one of the party holds a judicial office in the same circuit does not apply in this circumstance. Interesting. Second, and perhaps most importantly, Defendant Williams' motion ignores the clear directive of Uniform Superior Court Rule 25.4. That rule directs that in a multi-judge circuit like the Atlanta Judicial Circuit, a recusal motion shall be assigned for hearing to another judge, and the selection shall be made by use of the circuit's existing random impartial case assignment methods. So that makes it pretty clear right there that she doesn't have to do it. That there's no reason to recuse there. So that's that. It shows she's moving really fast. I mean, they're supposed to rule on there's good old Thugger Daily. He's got the screenshots here, but they're supposed to rule on, the prosecution's supposed to file their opposition to the recusal motions by Wednesday. And at first I was thinking maybe we won't have a ruling by Friday, but looking at how fast she's going, and she hasn't said anything about an optional reply. I know some people were asking if the defense is going to be able to reply to whatever opposition they file. And typically that's what I see. There's like an optional reply, but the judge didn't say anything about that in her deadline order. So I'm not really sure. If that's not the case, like if she's not going to wait for a reply from the defense, then maybe we'll have a ruling by Friday. I don't know. It's hard to say, but she turned this around really, really fast. Pull up Brian Steele's recusal motion. But this was what was filed last night. You see the 8:30 p.m. stamp in Fulton County Superior Court for Monday night, but it's the supplement to the motion to recuse Judge Glanville. And this is before they corrected the fact that he did not donate to, she did not donate to his campaign. He donated to her campaign, but she did not donate to his campaign. There's the supplement just corrects this like bottom thing, but I don't have a PDF of that yet. But they also go out and seek to recuse the lawyers. They want the prosecutors off the case now, and they really make the point for it. I don't think it's going to happen, but we could see. I can see why they're making the argument. They're advocating for their clients. So it'll be definitely going to be interesting to read the ruling on all this stuff. But let me see here. But again, just to catch people up, Judge Rachel Krause, who was assigned to the recusal motions against Judge Glanville in the Young Thug YSL trial, issued an order today saying she's not going to recuse herself from the recusal motions. She is going to be the one to decide these motions. Brian Steele, Young Thug's lawyer, and Keith Adams had filed something calling her out on a $2,000 campaign donation she had received from Judge Glanville just back in April for her reelection campaign. And they said that warrants recusal, but she said no. And she cited some cases saying that just the mere fact that the mere existence of a campaign donation does not warrant recusal. So we've got our first real substantive order here. This is obviously not addressing whether Judge Glanville should recuse from the entire trial, but that's going to be coming probably sooner than later. I expect by definitely the end of next week, we'll have a ruling on that. But remember what happened yesterday was prosecutors were supposed to file their response to the recusal motions that Judge Krause is considering, the recusal motions against Glanville, but they actually got a 2-day extension. And Judge DA Love said that she had been called away from work for an unexpected family emergency and needed the extra time. So it's now tomorrow at 5 p.m. that they're to be responding to that. So of course it's a question of how soon will we get a ruling, but Judge Krause turned this around really fast. I mean, this was filed last night. She already had a ruling in this morning after the supplement was filed. They filed the supplement correcting that it was just one campaign donation and not them both donating. So we could get a ruling here. So thank you guys on TikTok. I see all the love on here for joining in, and YouTube. We got a good crowd going. But let's go into. So I did notice some people on Twitter, some lawyers saying that the rhetoric or the language in Steele's motion seems a little over the top. But I mean, they're advocating for their clients. They're going all out. Like if they thought there was any chance that this stuff could happen and has any legal basis, they have to bring it, and clearly they do. So it's just the impassioned advocacy that we're used to seeing with Brian Steele and Keith Adams. But and exciting news. I've been reaching out I want to get some more interviews going, after we've gotten Doug Weinstein on here, and I'd love to get him back again soon. But I reached out to Max Shard and to see if he wanted to maybe come on and do a live, and he said sure, that there's some things he doesn't want to talk about, of course, and that's how Doug Weinstein is too. He's not just going to talk about everything, all their strategy and everything, but yeah, there's definitely some stuff he wants to talk about. So in the next week or so, I'm going to get that scheduled up. It'll be based on YouTube, but I'll also try to simulcast it on TikTok here. But Steele's motion here, he has some classic lines. Joseph, I know, at Atlanta Journal-Constitution did a story on it, and he quoted the stuff I would quote. But I'm going to be sending this all out in an email to my list, legalaffairsandtrials.com, later, with the summary of everything, links to documents and everything. So hey everybody, how's it going? I'm going on live now from Fox at 5 p.m. Pacific to talk about jury selection in the Alec Baldwin trial. I'm going to be following that. That starts, I think opening statements are tomorrow, or maybe tomorrow afternoon. I'm not sure quite what they did with the jury. I got to check up on that. But somebody calls me Queen on TikTok. I love that. Thank you. Hey, Meg. That's from Nye and I. Thank you so much. So yeah, and the TikTokers, just be warned, especially because we're kind of in a drought from clips from the Young Thug trial to post. I'm going to try posting some highlights from opening statements in Alec Baldwin's trial, because I think that'll be a big one. Probably won't be doing as much as I do with the Young Thug case, but that's going to be an interesting trial. If he gets convicted, he's definitely looking at prison time. So Nee says we love you down. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and getting the scoop here. But this is Brian Steele's supplement. He really gets into it here. There we go. Here, let me share that tab. Yes. Honestly, and this happens when you're reading Superior Court documents. Like sometimes the federal court filings are usually just like a little crisper. Sometimes the writing in here is a little hard to follow. But I get one thing you definitely get the impression of is that they're totally pissed. But yeah, for the people who are just joining us, the news today is the judge who was assigned to the recusal motions against Judge Glanville said that she is not going to recuse herself from the recusal motions. She will be the judge to decide them. Brian Steele and Keith Adams, on behalf of Young Thug, had filed a supplement last night to their recusal motion that called her out on a campaign donation. She'd actually received $2,000 campaign donation just back in April from Judge Glanville. It says you're all Dexter Glanville on the campaign line. But let me pull it up for the YouTube crowd. I brought up the here it is. This is everything she got. She got $167,750, and she spent $157,000. But you can go in, and I downloaded her contributions, and then you look for just search his name and he comes up. So it's $2,000. But the case law in Georgia shows that it's not just the existence of a campaign donation that would warrant recusal, because there's all sorts of cases where people tried to recuse the judge because like the district attorney had donated to the judge's campaign and it didn't work. The cases that I was reading through that were cited in here, I didn't see where a judge had gotten recused from this. But the judge in her order saying, no, I'm not going to recuse, said, the mere existence of this doesn't warrant recusal. So she has not decided whether Judge Glanville should actually be recused from the case yet. And that's not going to happen until after the the prosecutors file their response to the motions, which is now due tomorrow. But I saw somebody saying that Trump is going to pardon Young Thug. He can't. It's a state case, first of all, so the federal government wouldn't have any power to pardon him. But then also, not even the governor in Georgia can do pardons. Georgia is one of the few states that doesn't even allow stateside pardons. So no, there's no chance that Trump could pardon Young Thug. It's the state federal thing, and then even if there was somebody within the state of Georgia who wanted to, they just don't have that allowed. So yeah, to catch everybody up, that's why the trial is on hold right now, because the recusal motion is being considered. And yeah, somebody asked if I saw the motion from Attorney Steele last night. Yeah, exactly. That's the supplement to the motion that I actually have up on screen in YouTube right now. It's where they call out the campaign donation. And they said that Krause had also donated to Glanville's campaign, but then they corrected it later and said that actually it's just Glanville who donated to Krause's campaign, but their recusal request still stood. So he really goes on to in the motion to the supplement that was filed, he goes on to ask that the lawyers, the prosecution team, be reassigned. And I don't know. I mean, I just think that we'll see what happens, and we'll see what the judge rules on the Glanville thing. But I just don't think it's going to happen. And from what I've read from some of the comments on here, people seem to think that when I say that, it means that like it's my personal opinion that he shouldn't be recused. But especially as a legal reporter, like when I talk to other legal reporters or other lawyers, we're not talking from the perspective of like what we would do. I'm not the judge. I don't have 25 years of trial judge experience and all this experience. Like, we just like to talk about what we think they're going to be doing, like what the people who are in charge and are assigned are going to do. It's not what we would do personally. It's not like a personal opinion. It's just from our own experience covering the judiciary, what do we think is going to happen? And especially, I think all the signals are here that she's not going to recuse Judge Glanville from the case, and she's certainly not going to kick the prosecutors off. But that doesn't mean that the defense isn't right to request all this, because like I said, if they think there's any chance for this, they're advocating for their clients, and they need to bring that up. But yeah, somebody was saying that why is a pardon needed when any conviction here was kind of guaranteed to be overturned by the appellate court. Yeah, I think it's a big question right now, whether they're even going to get a RICO conspiracy conviction, because this case is just so messed up. It's so long, and there's so many other charges. So it's possible that the jury could feel comfortable convicting on like some smaller drug charges, because I think I'd have to read through the exact indictment, which we could do. We could bring it up on Document Cloud. But he's charged with some lesser stuff like drug possession, where if he did get convicted of that, he'd probably be released, because he's already been in prison or jail for 2.5 years and 2 years or something. But 2 years, 2 months or something. But not getting convicted of RICO conspiracy would be a big loss for them. So whatever the case, if there's any kind of conviction that happens, they definitely have a really solid case on appeal. But one thing I noticed was an appellate attorney. He's based in Texas, but he's really active on Twitter. And he had tweeted the other day, let me see if I can bring it up. He tweeted about stuff that he tells trial counsel, like how he likes to hear when he goes in on an appeal. He hasn't been involved in the trial, and he will hear from the trial counsel about all their gripes because it really helps inform his own perspective. But he was saying that rarely are their biggest gripes and problems. Rarely does that actually become the biggest appeal issue that he files, that he argues. But he still wants to hear all about it. But he said it was interesting to hear him talk about how just there's just so many differences, and it shows how trial lawyers and appellate lawyers, think differently. And I know Brian Steele has tons of experience in the appellate courts, and I know Bruce Harvey does too, and they're all planning on this. But I was thinking about that there's so many issues in this trial that I think when if there is a conviction and that does go to the appellate court, that I think that they're going to have other issues to kind of hang the appeal on other than this ex parte, like just all the issues with the co-conspirators and the severance, and what Harvey always asks for with the limiting instruction regarding incriminating testimony or evidence, like it pertaining just to one person and not like the multi-defendants or something. It seems like that's what I see. Somebody asked why no motion for bond, like what they're waiting for. And I mean, they could file one, but I talked about this with Doug Weinstein the other night in an interview that he doesn't like to talk about things that are coming up or things that they might do. But I think they just kind of see it as a lost cause with Glanville right now. Like right now, well, the case is on hold, but it's still technically assigned to Glanville. And unless the case gets reassigned, I don't think they see that as being like a good use of resources and time, because they know that Glanville is just going to reject any kind of motion for bail like that. If it gets reassigned to another judge, they're definitely going to file a motion for bail. But I think they're just waiting to see what happens with this recusal motion here. So let's see. Who does Glanville report to? I mean, technically, Glanville, as a trial judge, his boss is the Court of Appeals, because they're the ones who decide whether people, trial judges made the right call or not. So, and definitely in California courts, that's how they feel. That's how the Superior Court judges feel. They're in the federal courts too. Their boss is the circuit court. In terms of judicial misconduct, there's a committee, at least in every state. I mean, we saw it in action with that Christine, what's her name? Judge Peterson, the probate judge who got removed. And it was like right after she got arrested, and that like really like crazy, there was all caught on video, but her removal from the bench actually really did have nothing to do with that. That's an example of the Georgia disciplinary issue and judicial disciplinary machine in action. Actually, if you guys are interested, you should follow Cedra Mayfield. She's my old colleague at law.com ALM, but she works for law.com and ALM, but she works for the Daily, or it's the Recorder in Atlanta. It's the legal newspaper in Atlanta. So she was covering Judge Peterson's whole disciplinary thing. I was seeing her. She went to the hearings and saw the testimony and stuff. And it's just totally different from Glanville's situation. There are parallels in the ruling. Like one big issue was her holding somebody in contempt of court and not really giving any kind of basis for that, let alone giving them the maximum sentence of 20 days in jail, which is exactly what he did with Steele. And then she also did some ex parte communication, communicating with just one party in the case without disclosing it to the other party. But the misconduct on her was like so much bigger than that. Like those two things probably would not be it's just everything she did about that. Like one thing the opinion cites removing her from the bench is her lying in her own disciplinary hearing. Like they said that she just blatantly lied. It's a really detailed hearing. I mean, it's like totally egregious, but I don't think there's any chance that Glanville would ever be brought up. Like he hasn't done the kind of misconduct that's going to bring him up before a disciplinary panel like that, like for sure. But thank you guys for for tuning in. I don't know, and it'd be interesting to see how much, like, if the jury really is watching, because it seems like if the jury, like, it must suck to be at the courthouse all the time for this, and when they get off, it's like, do they really want to hear more about the case, or do they just have their own families and lives that they want to get back to? But yeah, so anyway, if you guys go to legalaffairsandtrials.com and sign up for my newsletter, I'm going to write something up that includes a link to all the documents and kind of goes through everything for you and kind of explains where we are now. Because remember, like I said, just to catch everybody up, the judge who is assigned to decide whether Judge Glanville should be kicked off the Young Thug YSL trial said today that she will be the judge who decides these recusal motions. She rejected requests to recuse herself from the recusal motions that were filed by Young Thug's lawyers and also Diamante Kendrick's lawyers. Young Thug's lawyers had actually cited a $2,000 campaign donation that she received from Judge Glanville just back in April, and said that, along with the fact that they work in the same court, warrants recusal, and this should be sent to another superior court, a judge in another superior court. But she said no and really issued an order pretty quick explaining why she didn't think she needed to do that. So remember, tomorrow is the day that prosecutors will file their opposition response to the recusal motions against Glanville that Judge Krause is currently deciding. So it'll be interesting to see how those all come together. And like I was saying during the last live, it'll be interesting to see the tone that they take. Because I think when we go through the case law, you can kind of do your own research into all the cases that they cite here and see how mostly they're going to be explaining why case law shows recusal isn't warranted and using examples from the other cases. But here's Rachel R. Krause, the judge who was assigned to the case here. So she's only been a judge since 2018, which, is 6 years or so, 5.5 maybe to 6 years. But I've always kind of heard when I was doing judge profiles in Orange County Superior Court and LA Superior Court that it really can take like 5 or 6 years to kind of get your feet under you as a judge. Like, that's why, you see these people who just coast through their federal judgeships and go straight to the Court of Appeals and then the Supreme Court. It's like being a judge for 2 years is barely even enough to do anything, but 6 years is still pretty experienced. But I know in judge circles, she would be considered kind of a rookie still. Whereas Judge Glanville's been a Superior Court judge since 2005. But, Lewis Brisboe, that's a big law firm. What I kind of noticed was she does not have, and maybe she did some criminal cases when she was at these law firms, but she has not been a public defender or a district attorney. She doesn't have that kind of experience under her belt. Not a lot of criminal law experience, although maybe she has it now because she's been a judge for 6 years. But like I said, I was surprised that an incumbent judge like her would feel the need to raise money for a reelection campaign. And it must just be, it's just local politics in Georgia or Atlanta, but I don't really see that much in Orange County, where the campaign fundraising that you see judges do, it's people who are running for a new judgeship. They're not incumbents. So it's a battle for an open seat, and that's when there's actually an election. But kind of the thought is that incumbent judges are easily get reelected. So the idea, at least in California, the idea that they think they need to raise money, it's just such a turnoff. Like, even when the new guys, they're not technically judges yet, but they're running for an open seat, I get their shit on my Instagram, their campaign, because everybody thinks they need to create like an Instagram and social media presence for their campaigns. And it's these lawyers who are running for judges, and they're just like whoring themselves to the sheriff and stuff. They're like, oh, this is down in Orange County. So they're like, oh, Don Barnes, the sheriff, he's hosting my campaign. He supports me. It's like, Don Barnes, the guy who runs the sheriff's department that like violates everyone's civil rights and had some big snitch scandal, like jail informant scandal that still goes on to this day. The fact that he supports you is not like make me feel better about voting for you, but I'm just like totally in the minority on that. I mean, they just know their audience down in Orange County, and Orange County is all about, public safety and stuff. And like most people in Orange County don't give a shit that the sheriff's corrupt and violates people's civil rights. So they know that they can, campaign with them and it doesn't matter. But God, I'm like, this is so gross that we have judges like politicizing themselves and whoring themselves out like that. But that was unique to a situation in California. I'm not totally familiar with the politics of the judicial elections in Georgia, but like I said, just the fact that an incumbent judge of 6 years feels the need to raise money for a campaign, it's just fucking gross, guys. Like, but anyway, anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys have any more questions or anything, let me know. But again, the news is that Rachel Krause, this is the judge we're looking at here, is going to be the one to decide the recusal motions. She issued an order today saying, rejecting a request to step down from both Doug Weinstein and his co-counsel, the lawyers for Diamante Kendrick, and rejecting a request from Brian Steele and Keith Adams, lawyers for Young Thug. And they had filed a pretty hefty motion last night, also calling for the prosecutors to be kicked off the case. So I think she'll have to address that. Judge Krause will in her order, but she issued an order pretty quick today saying that she doesn't need to step down from the recusal motions, that a campaign donation, just the mere existence of one, isn't a reason for her to step down. So that's the big news here. You can see the order here denying motion to recuse Judge Krause from hearing recusal motions. So the next news is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time is the deadline for prosecutors to respond to the 3 recusal motions that Judge Krause is going to be considering. Given her quick turnaround on this morning, I'm wondering, gosh, could we get a ruling before the end of Friday? Possibly, but don't be surprised if it's not till next week. But I definitely think by end of next week we're going to have a ruling on these recusal motions happening. But somebody asked if I see an acquittal coming, and it could if it ever eventually gets to the jury. But the thing that's just crazy about this case is how long it is. I mean, if Judge Krause does reject the recusal motions and sends the case back to Judge Glanville, we've got like another year of testimony at least. I mean, they're going to have a couple more days of going through Woody's jailhouse calls because they're going to decide what he can be asked about on the stand. And then he's going to get back on the stand for more direct testimony, and then they'll get into cross. So I think before July, before July, we can have testimony again. But I think, we're going to have a ruling here pretty quick from Judge Krause. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in and for all your support and everything. And you guys are the best. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.